Alright, so welcome everyone. Today we're doing Yin Yoga for arms and shoulders, and you will need a thick blanket today just for a little support under the body for some of the poses that we'll be doing. So just a blanket will do. So we're starting off on our backs, coming down to our backs for our Shavasana. So as you come down, just make sure, as you lie on your back, just make sure you're very comfortable. You can always place a pillow under the head or a blanket and something under the knees as well for support. And as you come down onto your back, just make sure you're laying down evenly. Legs are spread evenly, arms slightly away from the body with the palms facing outwards. And then soften your shoulders. Draw the shoulders slightly away from the ears. Pick up the hips and draw the hips away from the shoulders, and then allow the body to relax onto your mat. And we'll start our class by focusing on breath flowing in and out through the nose. So just taking deeper inhales in through the nose, and then a long exhale out through the nose as well. And with your next exhale, soften your facial features, the skin around your eyes, your jaw and your cheeks. Exhale to breathe out tension from your shoulders. Feel the shoulder blades melt down the back. Start to ease tension from your chest. And as you exhale, allow the belly to soften. Loosen your arms, your hands and fingers. Soften your feet and toes. The entire body is at ease. Now let the mind settle as well. Begin to put aside everything else. So the past and the future, and allow yourselves to be present and in the moment. A few more deep breaths here. One more. We'll start to slowly wake up the body with some small movements, fingers to toes wriggling, and then rolling out your wrists and ankles while starting to fire up some of those muscles. Rolling the wrists and ankles in one direction and then switching directions. And letting the head drop side to side. And then draw your feet in a little closer towards the hips. Now next, gather the knees into the chest for a roll, a hug and a roll. So some small circles with those knees together a few times in one direction and then the next. And then coming back to the center, roll yourself over to one side And then let's come on up, and we will start off with our first pose. It's called melting heart pose, also known as puppy pose. And it's a stretch that can be pretty intense on the shoulders. So you do have, so just give a quick demonstration in case you've never seen it before. You may need a blanket for your knees, and you can do this with toes curled under for extra stretch for the feet as well. If that feels too much, anytime you can point those toes. So knees about hips width apart. And one version of this is with your arms stretched out, and you're trying to get the chest melted towards the ground. So forehead may be touching the ground, or some of you can get more of your chin on the ground. So just depending on how you feel with the neck. Okay, so start off with forehead on the ground. If this still feels too intense, you can do it with one arm down and the other arm stretched out. So you want to feel this stretch at the front of the shoulders, into the underarms, and into the upper chest. Okay, so I'll let you know when you're about halfway through. So in case you're doing just that one arm version, you can switch it around. So another softer version that you could try to do is to allow your something to be under the chest. So you can grab a hold of a pillow as well, or a bolster if you have it handy. Just kind of place it under the chest, a little support. So totally up to you. Whether you're doing one or both arms, if you let your forearms come down to the floor, it'll be a little easier on the elbows. But with the arms stretched out, it's just a stronger pose. So again, options and modifications that you can choose to do. If you're very open, your chest will continue to melt towards the ground, and you're doing your best to approximate the hips over the knees. So if it's slightly back, that's fine. Slightly forward is fine too, but just looking to make sure the hips are over the knees. If you're doing the one arm version, go ahead and switch to the other arm, forearm bracing, opposite forearm bracing on the ground, and stretch the other arm out. Taking about 3 to 5 deep breaths here, just depending on how long those breaths are. It takes you to that 30-second mark. And last one. So with all our yin poses, we want to move out slowly out of the pose. So maybe your forearms comes down and you'll shift forward and then up onto your hands and knees. If you have your toes tucked under, just point them, give them a little wiggle. You're in tabletop pose here, and just drawing small circles with the chest facing the ground, just small circles with the chest in tabletop, and this just gives your shoulders a little bit of movement. Just work out any kinks that may have occurred when you were doing melting heart. Okay, so one direction and then the other. Yeah, and just because we'll be with our knees bent for a bit and more, just take one leg, stretch it out, just a counter stretch here. One leg out, just a couple of breaths. And then the other one. Okay. And next up pose is going to be child's pose, white knee child's pose with a side stretch included. So with white knee child's pose, your knees are a little wider than normal, so towards the edges of the mat, and your big toes are touching. If you have a hard time coming into child's pose, that's the one where you sink your hips back Twist those heels. You can always place a blanket between your thighs and your calves. So forehead down with the arms stretched out. Okay, so we're coming into the side stretch component of this pose. As you lay here in child's pose, forehead touching the ground or a pillow, you'll walk your hands slightly over to one side of the mat so that you feel that stretch to the side, opposite side of the body into the shoulders. So there's no twist to the spine in this pose. Your chest is facing the ground for this one. And only go as far as is comfortable for you, allowing yourself to, a pose that will allow you to be able to melt into your space and soften. So no tension to the neck or the face. And you want to allow gravity to do the work for you. So you let your hips sink with each exhale. And there's a slight rounding of the spine as well. With each exhale, allow your shoulders to soften. If you feel the tension start to build up in the tension start to build up in the shoulder area, use your exhales to allow for relaxation to happen. So exhale, soften. Taking just a couple more deep breaths. Before you move over to the other side, if you need to move around a little bit, just come out and take those movements. And then whenever you're ready, just right back into that child's pose with your arms reaching to the opposite side. Remember to keep the shoulders and chest level to the ground. And if at all possible, you're resting your head down on something. So use your exhales as the vehicle for you to seek softness. So with each exhale, allow those hips to sink deeper. With each exhale, soften the shoulders, relax the face. Feel those arms grow heavier. Taking about 3 to 5 deep breaths. Last one. All right. So slowly make your way back to the middle. As always, slow movement. Come on back up into the tabletop. It will feel really good to come into downward facing dog. If that's part of your practice, come on into downward facing dog. If not, just stay in tabletop and stretch those legs out in tabletop. That's fine too. So just a moment in your down dog tabletop. Stretch those legs out. Any kind of movement that you need to take, maybe even cats and cows. I feel good. And our next pose, we're headed down into our belly to come into dragonfly pose, or some people know it as crocodile pose. So unless you need something for under your hips, you can put the blanket off to one side or have it closed in case you need it for your head. So I'm doing facing you so that you can see what's happening. Your toes are pointed about hips width apart, so relax back there. And you can do this one of two ways. So level one is to bring one arm across the body, palm facing outwards. So the goal is to feel the stretch to the front of that shoulder. Okay, so your chest is facing down and the other arm is stretched out. So your head is somewhat hanging, or you can place a pillow or block under the head for a little support. Okay, so you're going to let the weight of your body increase the stretch for you, and the other arm is just there to control the pressure. If you're pretty open in the shoulders, then you'll let the other arm go across too. So you're kind of hugging yourself here a little. Both shoulders will get the stretch in this case. And if you're doing it that way, if you can't quite feel the stretch, tuck the toes under behind you and very carefully push yourself forward. And once you're there, you'll point the toes. So then just let the head hang here. And we're taking about 1.5 minutes in this pose. Okay. So feel free to come out anytime you need to before. Good. There shouldn't be any pain in the elbows. If there is, you just try to back off a little, bending the elbows slightly, moving the arms slightly ahead so that you're not feeling so much in the arms, rather feeling in the shoulders. Try to keep those breaths slow. Okay. Sometimes because we are kind of pressing down into the lungs here, we tend to hold our breaths. So encourage slow and steady breaths. I'll take the last two. Okay. So especially if you have both arms crossed in front of you, you want to make sure you know which arm is closer to you right now, so that when you switch it around, it'll be the opposite one. So just kind of roll out this pose, and then we'll switch to the other side when you're ready. So any kind of movement that you need to take before coming into it. And when you're ready, that arm, opposite arm tries to cross. Again, you control how much of a stretch you get. Okay, so other arm is out in front of you and just holding it here. Or if you're pretty mobile and you're able to, pretty flexible in the shoulders, you can stretch those arms out. Close your eyes. If you need more, tuck those toes behind you. Give yourself a gentle nudge forward to increase the stretch. And then again, point those toes. So eyes closed, deep breath. And if your mind has wandered off, just bring it back to the moment, to your breath. And we've got the last 30 seconds left here. It's about 3 to 5 deep breaths. And last one. Okay. We carefully roll our way out of this pose. And just for a moment, come up into seated so that you can just do some of the shoulder rolls. So a few rolls in one direction and then the other. Okay. And then neck rolls as well. So chin over to one shoulder, chin down towards the chest to the opposite shoulder, just drawing those semicircles. Just be mindful, always slow movements, controlled movements. Okay. All right. So our next pose is going to be, it's going to be called rack pose. You're going to be on your back, seated for this one. Okay. And we'll do this you can do this a couple of ways. A softer version is with the knees bent, feet flat on the ground, and you just walk your hands back until you start to feel a stretch to the front of the shoulders. And then the harder version is with the toes pointed. Okay, so both feels actually pretty similar. You might find actually this harder, so just play around with it. As for your arms, they are about shoulders width apart. You can have them wider, especially if your elbows hurt in this position with the arms close together. Okay, so you can bring them as best as you can, fingers pointed back, arms about shoulders width apart, okay, toes pointed. And you'll start to feel the stretch already. As to deepen the stretch, you'll begin to puff the chest up towards the ceiling. So careful of the neck. You want to be in the natural position without strain. And we're not holding this for too long. So just staying here for about 1.5 to 2 minutes. But if you need to come out sooner than that, especially if you're feeling strain in those elbows or the neck, you can certainly release sooner than that. So deep breaths, close your eyes. Try to notice if those shoulders have shoved up towards the ears. If they have, just gently draw them back to that neutral position. You can notice if the elbows don't feel too good here. Just walk those hands out a little further and maybe just hold the pose a little longer. All right. Last 3 to 5 breaths. One more. Okay. Soften the belly. Okay. Very slowly walk those hands back in. Okay. Give those wrists a little roll out, little movement to the elbows too, shoulders as well. The other direction. Okay. Then just before we move on to the next pose, we're going to do a neck stretch. One hand walks out to the side and then the opposite ear drop towards the shoulder. So just a gentle neck stretch, enough to feel opening the neck muscles and the shoulder, the top of the shoulder. Okay. And then to the other side. Good. Coming back to the center and just natural shoulder rolls. So in a moment, our next pose is going to be actual shoulder roll on the ground. And I'm going to demonstrate this against the wall, but you'll be face down on the ground. So demonstrate it on the wall just so you can see me a little better. Okay. So for this one, you may need a pillow for under the head. And you'll be facing the ground. And we'll be stretching the right arm first. So you can move over to the left side of your mat so that half your body is hanging off the mat. Okay, so your right arm is palms down on the ground. And then you're turning your gaze away from the right, so you're turning towards the left side. And then with your other hand, you'll roll the body off of the mat so that you're on the side of the body. Now you control how much of a stretch you'll get with this right arm. And then it's easier if you have that one knee bend. Okay, so the other arm is there. The left hand is on the ground just to give you a little support so that if you need to roll, if you need to decrease the stretch, you can roll the chest towards the ground. If you need a little bit more, you'll roll the chest away from the ground. So it just depends on how much of the stretch you need. Some of you may need a little bit more, and that's when that left arm can come across the low back and tuck under the opposite waist. And your head's just resting on the floor or on a block or a pillow. Okay, from the floor, in case it was hard to see. Rolling over to one side. So we are starting to hold our poses just a little longer than before, but because this is a harder pose to hold on a little longer, you'll listen to your body. If you need to back off sooner than that, please don't hesitate. Okay. If you feel like you could use a little bit more, you'll deepen it. But just be very mindful as you approach this last minute. So deepen it by rolling a little bit more, thinking of squeezing the shoulder blades together. If you have your left arm under the waist, squeezing the shoulder blades together. Last 3 to 5 breaths. Take that last breath here. And you'll slowly roll the chest to face the wall and turn your gaze back towards that same arm. So that vascular flush happens, so that the blood flow back to that joint. Just a moment before you move on. So just take those deep breaths. Gaze towards that right arm. Okay. And then we'll be moving over to the other side. So just take your time, any kind of movement that you need to do before we move over to the other side. So this time it will be the left arm that's stretched out, and you'll be moving over to the right side of the mat. Okay. So turn your gaze away from that left arm. Use your right hand to help roll the torso away from the floor so that your right shoulder lifts off the mat. And then one knee bend will be a little easier. Again, using that right arm to control how much of a roll you do. And this side might be a little different. And for those of you who need more, that right arm can come across the low back, tucking under the waist. His head is resting on a prop or on the ground. Do your best to slow down the exhales. And just being okay, being all right with being still and calm, breathing through any slight discomfort that you may be feeling. Moving into that last minute. So if you could use a little bit more, you'll look for a little bit more depth, a little bit more of a shoulder roll, maybe squeezing the shoulder blades together if you have that right arm under the waist. Okay, so again, moving mindfully, deepening mindfully and carefully. Okay. Last 3 to 5 breaths. One more. Okay. So slowly roll the chest to face the ground and turn your gaze to the left arm, so towards the left side. Just pause there for a moment again, just letting everything settle in that shoulder. Let the blood rush back. Take those deep breaths. Don't feel the need to move too quickly. Okay, and then slowly you'll start to make your way back up to seated. Again, in between these poses, feel free to move around. Just roll out those shoulders, move the head. Okay. Our next pose is going to be sort of a version of supported fish pose, but targeting the shoulders. So you'll need that blanket that I talked about for this one. And the blanket is going to go parallel to the short edge of your mat. So in line with your shoulders, but it's going to come just under the underarm. Okay, so as you lie down, the shoulders shouldn't hang up just slightly off of the bolster. Okay, so if you're stretching your arm out, you can just allow the arm to stretch out without the blanket or the bolster in your way. And if you have a hard time with the head in this pose, you're going to place a pillow under the head. Okay, so the target here is not quite the legs, so you can let the legs simply stretch out. But if you want a little bit more, you are welcome to bring those feet into cobbler's pose. Our focus will be our arms, so the shoulders. So if at all possible, you'll let the arms reach behind you, arms on the ground. If you have a hard time doing this, you can widen your arms more in a cactus position, and then maybe after a while, you reach your arms overhead. Okay. If you find it really easy with the arms overhead, you'll be grabbing opposite elbow. So just use your right arm to grab your left elbow, so you get an extra tricep stretch for that in that case. Okay. So one arm grabbing the opposite elbows, and you're trying to let the arms touch the ground. So if you go that route, I'll let you know when we're halfway through so that you can switch the arms around. We do stay here for a full 4 minutes. So again, at any time you need to back off, you can widen those arms just to soften through the shoulders. And then when you're ready, you can join us again. If you had chosen to grab one elbow, go ahead and switch, grabbing the opposite elbow. Good. Tuning back to those slow breaths. Into that final minute of this pose, use each exhale as the opportunity to relax even deeper, sink even deeper into your mat and into your space. You've got 3 to 5 deep breaths left to go. Last one. Carefully bring those arms down by your sides and then roll over to one side. And just move the blanket up a little higher to support the head. Okay. And then we are going to be coming onto our back. So rolling onto your back without any props underneath you, knees in for a hug and a roll out. Okay. So in a moment, we'll be doing a spinal twist, but the twist is going to be more towards the upper part of the body. So you may need a blanket for your arm. Okay, so usually we put a blanket under the leg, but this time we're twisting the upper torso. So you'll be starting off facing, let's face the left side to start off with, and you'll have a pillow or that blanket over to the right side. Okay, so you're facing the left, the pillow is behind you. You'll be in fetal position. Your knees are bent and stacked. So the goal, you'll try to keep the knees on the ground with the knees stacked. Okay, so you're on one side and you'll take the right arm and lift it up and over. So here's where that blanket or the pillow might come in handy. If that arm doesn't come down to the ground, you rest your right arm on that blanket or the pillow. Okay, if you are quite open and you're able to twist all the way without lifting the knees off the mat. You want to keep those knees down and stacked. Then you won't need the prop. And as for your gaze, if you like, you can turn your gaze away from the knees if it doesn't hurt the neck. If it does, then just keep it to the same side or up towards the ceiling. The body has begun to relax a little bit more. Perhaps you can get rid of the prop that's under your arm if you're using it. And continue to relax even more into your space. Use your breath. With each breath, use it as an opportunity to let go even more. And here's the last minute. About 2 more breaths to go. Right. Start by unwinding the spine first. So that right arm, bring it back towards the left side. And then you'll be onto your back, rolling onto your back. So you can hug the knees in for that roll out, or just simply letting the knees drop side to side in windshield wiper might feel really good as well. And then next we'll be twisting to the opposite side. So this time your knees will be over to the right side, stacked. And if you're using a prop, just bring it over to the opposite side. We try to keep those knees stacked. And then open up, left arm on the prop or on the ground. Okay, so again, working to keep your knees stacked and that bottom knee down, touching the ground. As for your gaze, you can keep it same side towards the ceiling, or if you can, it's the opposite side, but only if it doesn't strain or hurt your neck. Okay. And if at all possible, this is a passive stretch. So no need to do work here. See if you can let go even more. Feel yourself growing heavier, breath is flowing deeply, slowly. And again, using each breath, each exhale as an opportunity to relax even more, letting go even more. Close to that halfway point, if you use a block under that arm, you can try removing it because the body would have relaxed a little bit more, and maybe you can find just a little bit more depth, a little bit more twist. And 3 to 5 deep breaths left to go. Last one. Okay. To unwind the spine, bring the left arm back to the right side so that you're in that fetal position. And just resting for a moment. When you're ready, you're onto your back, knees in for a hug, and that roll out. Okay, a little bit of a roll out. Maybe windshield wipers. Okay. And we're coming into Shavasana today, but the supported Shavasana. So it is going to be a little longer of a Shavasana, so a full 10-minute Shavasana. And we are going to use the blanket to support us. So the blanket, you can fold it quite thinly so that the upper body will be resting on it. Okay, so even your head will be resting on the blanket. And if you need a pillow, a little bit more support, you'll do so. But for this version, we're going to fold up the blanket slightly so that it creates a little bump where your neck is going to go. So you're going to create a little support for the neck. And if you need a bolster under the knees for a little support, you'll get it there right now so that you can even use a little pillow in that case. So just under the knee if you need a little support. Okay, so just going to come down and adjust so that your neck is supported and it's rested on the ground. And then legs stretched out comfortably, palms up, okay, and allow your shoulders to relax. So a little bit of a chest opener with the blanket under the body. Okay, a little support for the neck, eyes closed, palms up, palms slightly away from the body. So slowly scan the body to make sure that we're not holding on to any tension. Just making sure that the feet are relaxed. Legs are heavy. soft belly, relax chest and shoulders, arms, hands and fingers soft. Face soft and relaxed. Jaw, cheeks. Let your tongue fall away from the roof of your mouth and soften the skin around your eyes and your forehead. Allow calmness to sweep through you from feet all the way up to crown of the head. And with relaxed body and relaxed mind, enjoy your Savasana. Enjoy peace. Slowly, peacefully and calmly begin to make your way back onto your mat and onto your space. Taking those deeper breaths and waking up your body with small movements of fingers, your toes, your wrists, and your ankles. Letting your head drop side to side. And if you're ready for a big stretch, reach your arms overhead, stretch long from toes to fingertips, taking that big inhale as you do so. And then exhale to release and let it go. Perhaps a hug of the knees into the chest for rollout. And if you want to roll over to one side and hold it there for a little longer, go ahead and do that. A few breaths there in that fetal position. And when you're ready, come on back up and grab a comfortable seat. To close off our class as a group, we will be taking an inhale in through the nose and then together just a big exhale, big sigh out through the mouth. And let's do that as a group. Take a big inhale, a big Thank you very much and namaste.